Y'all, Wizard101's latest update is kinda massive. Not only did they release a gigantic dungeon that I've been running up for hours now, but they also changed a bunch of spells. So today I thought I'd go through all of them. Some of these are actually kinda crazy. The big highlight of this update seems to be the Nova spells. They added spellman paths to all of them, like a top path for like, I guess, damage and damage only. But they also updated some other spells, specifically for Storm and Ice. So I thought we would jump into it, get into the details. I'm starting with the Nova spells because these are a little bit crazy. They do a lot more than they used to. So it looks like the balance spell's echo mechanic got buffed pretty like, you know, like severely. The way this works now, I guess, is it does about 200 damage per, you know, per hit, and it does 3 hits. And what's really cool about the spell is you can't Spirit Shield or Ellie Shield against it because Life and Ice are not something that is, you know, you can't shield against both at the same time. So it's already a very good spell, but basically if your opponent has a shield, it'll echo that and give you a 65%. And if your opponent has a heal, it'll echo that and give you a 580 heal for 5 rounds. Is that heal really that crazy? I mean, we're looking at like, what, 120 heal around. The 65 shield really seems to be the big one. What can happen is someone could be like Ellie shielding against you because they're scared of Hydra, and then you can do like a Scales of Destiny now, and you could basically get a 65 shield back. So this could be a really big game changer in PvP. Moving right on along, they also buffed Gravestorm. Now, right now, that top path, it is bugged. Apparently, it's 100% drain. If you're aware of this bug, what I recommend is not to queue up and spam this. I think that falls under exploiting. I don't really care to give my opinion on this. If you do it and there's consequences, that's on you. I feel like the bottom path is actually the real topic of discussion here for me. So it is still a pretty weak drain for 5 pips, but the gambit is crazy. So basically the way this works is if you have weaknesses on your opponent, it trades them off for 70% Stormblades. This is now the most powerful buff in the game for PvP because Feint is no PvP. Now, how do you get weaknesses on your opponent? You could be very direct about it and literally just put on a 3-fold. Or if they blade, maybe you could like do something like a Banshee. This could be really good if a death runs storm damage and they happen to get weaknesses on their opponent, because this is a crazy amount of threat, like right away. But also, if you're a death, you're running storm damage, you could maybe, you know, use your excess weaknesses that you'll probably get, and maybe you could set up a really powerful storm damage hit. 70% is mad powerful. I'm not sure if this will break the game. I mean, it's very easy to counter blades. All you have to do is click Banshee and call it a day. But it's still really cool to see as time goes on how big the damage output has gotten in this game. This is definitely going to be a fun spell to use if you have never used it. Star Spawn doesn't really seem to have gotten a gigantic update. I would argue it's already a very good spell. It clears traps and sets up overtimes. If you do clear 2 traps, it sets up 2 overtimes on your opponent. So you could use that for things that, you know, gain power by getting multiple overtimes on your opponent. I will say this, recently they removed flat res, so that 172 fire damage, it won't do 0 damage. So maybe this is actually like untapped. I haven't really seen people use this, but I guess, you know, nothing has really changed to make this better or worse than, you know, when this update dropped like a few days ago. Improbable Gaze is yet another spell that got a massive update this time around. So the first big update is the top path is just a really big hit. It's just literally a better minnow. And I'm gonna be honest, y'all, it's not really hard to just set your pips to ice and use this. I think a lot of Myth Wizards are going to be using this purely for the damage, which is kind of nuts already. But the bottom path is also way more powerful. So just like Gravestorm, it's a gambit for multiple effects. But instead of weaknesses like Gravestorm, this gambit's traps on your opponent and turns them into -65 universal shields. Now, this used to be an absorb, so it was basically borderline useless. Absorbs aren't really that good. But 2 -65 shields, that's kind of nuts. It's basically a hit and shield if you have traps on your opponent, while also double hitting. Kind of an insane amount of actions in 1 turn if you happen to have 2 extra traps. I'd say Spirit Trap is probably one of the easiest ways to set this up, right? You can maybe threaten a buffed myth hit, they'll shield over it, you do a double hit, so you might lose the myth trap, but then you have that life and death trap left over. Then you could use those for shields, basically. I don't know which path I'll be using. I'm definitely going to be using one of these in PvP, so it should be pretty exciting to see. Tree of Strife, just like Starspawn, didn't get a massive upgrade in terms of what it does. It's just way more damage on the top path. So this top path didn't exist before. If you're into PvE, you might want this just because it's the best 5-pip hit in the game right now, because it doesn't lose any damage for the utility. So that 850 damage, really powerful stuff. In PvP, I don't really recommend using this over this spell. Teacup is really good. It actually heals you when you blade. like it gambits blades. It's really cool if you can set up a good combo with it. So I would argue this is very obviously like, you know, one path is for PvE, one path is for PvP. Deadly Depths also did not get a massive change. It just clears blades for -60 storm weaknesses. The real story is the extra tier just gives you a little bit of extra damage. Nothing too crazy. I'm not really sure there's like, you know, anything to really invest in here as an ice wizard. And finally, Glimpse also got a massive upgrade. These traps that it creates after clearing shields are now 50%. I would also like to add that for 5 pips, this is actually a very powerful spell. This is about as good as an Inferno Salamander, and because it's 5 pips and not 6 pips, it's actually way better. I think the thing with OTs in general is that they get removed very easily with a 4 pip spell like Kraken, so that's going to be the inherent inbuilt weakness of Glimpse, but maybe we'll see people that are running fire damage on a myth doing this and getting really, really powerful traps out of shield. As far as the storm and ice buffs, they're small, but they are meaningful in my opinion. Storm Shark has a much more powerful bottom path, and the way this works is it just adds damage for a heal over time being on you up to 2, and this is just doing way more than it used to. It's literally doing, I kid you not, 820 damage if you have 2 heals on yourself for 3 pips. 820 damage is comparable to a whole school pip and 2 extra pips of damage if you look at Tree of Strife. So this is going to be an extremely powerful spell if you can get 2 heals on yourself. And then there's also the bottom path of Triton. They increase the damage a little bit, and the blades that you get for clearing a heal is up by 5%. I don't think this is like a crazy big deal. I do like the extra damage though. I think this is going to be a much better spell against healers. It was already a very good spell, so I feel like it was almost an unnecessary buff. I guess it might be better if you're dual schooling and using this for, you know, heal countering. And finally, Ice got a huge Colossus buff. They can basically turn shields into 50 traps with Colossus now. This used to be 35 traps. Way better than it used to be. The really weird thing, for some reason, I don't know why they did this, but Frost Beetle gambits shields just like it used to, but it turns them into a 65 universal shield. It used to turn it into a 65 shield based on the school of your opponent. This is the only spell that they've updated that feels like a dead ass. It feels like a nerf. I mean, I feel like a set shield is just better, but maybe, I don't know if there's threats that are off school. Maybe this is just a safer bet. I don't really know. Those are the big spell changes. If you go through your spell book, you might notice that some of the big gambits, like we're talking like the 7 to 11 pip gambits, they might have their multiplier change. So they did reduce the damage that blade and trap gambits do. And they obviously, big topic here, increased the amount of damage shield gambits do. This might be getting reversed somewhat soon, or maybe like scaled back. That's what seems to be the case. So if that happens, I'll update y'all then. But these are all the spells that if you didn't know, you know now. They changed. Let me know what you guys think about these spell changes. So what's your favorite spell change? Drop a comment. I look forward to reading all y'all's comments. Let me know what y'all think. As always, if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome. See y'all soon. And yeah.